And let's see. So, and then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on chat so that those of you who are live um, can share resources in chat. So, a couple of things here today is that we've got a good group, and you can communicate amongst each other and share resources amongst each other by using chat. Just use the drop down for everyone there. And then if you've got specific questions for me, probably the best way to address those is to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type in the questions there, and I'll make sure that I get to them. You could also raise your virtual hand, and I could open up your mic and you could ask a question that way. I'm going to try to take a lot of breaks because I want to make this interactive and address the topics that are of interest to you. And so let's do this before I've been running a little poll here. And so let's see the results of this poll. And I'm going to share those results with everybody so everybody can see what the audience here is interested in today. So not surprising, aging in place options are at the top of the list. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've got, and then the runner-up is financial and legal and communicating amongst parents, children, and siblings, that whole communication issue when it comes to whether you're planning for yourself or concerned about an older loved one. And then it looks like following that, we've got dementia and Alzheimer's as being something that's on today's audience mind. But everything that you see on this list here, I'm going to touch on it briefly, and I want to make sure that you all know that if you've got something that you want me to address, by all means, throw it into chat, type it into Q&A, or raise your virtual hand, and I will do my best to address it. So I'm going to jump in to a presentation. I'm going to take a few breaks and make sure that everything's on track. And let's kick this off here. My PowerPoints are primarily to keep me on track. As you're going to see, I get pretty excited about some of these topics, and I can kind of get a little bit too focused here. So today, what my goal is to help you see a new perspective on this stage in life that we call aging, retirement, senior living, what have you. A lot of times this stage in life doesn't have a lot of positive stigma behind it. And as you can see by the name of my company, Positive Aging and Pro Aging, I'm trying to change that. And so hopefully today I can share with you some perspective that will make you look at this stage as one that is just truly a life stage and that you'll have resources and ideas on how you and your loved ones can move through this life stage in the most positive manner. So I got a couple of slides to kind of kick us off before we dive into the resources. I love these images. This is a photographer, artist, put these together. And I used to teach undergrads aging studies at the University of Baltimore County, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And on the first day of class, I would always share these photos because a lot of times we look at older people or we look at somebody who is older and we're not really honoring the long life that they've lived and the different things that they've done and the fact that they were just like that they had interesting and active lives when they were younger. And it's easy when you look at somebody who might be more frail to sort of look at them at that position, but hopefully you see in these images that it's who we are inside. Okay. And so this is just, again, another, more of a reminder. The other two images that I like to share before I dive into these discussions is this ad campaign that was in the UK. And this image says wrinkled wonderful, and this one says gray gorgeous. And when I used to do these discussions live, I would share these images and I would say, well, look at these two ladies, wrinkled wonderful and gray gorgeous. Doesn't she know she could get plastic surgery to get rid of those wrinkles? And this woman here could color her hair a bunch of different colors as opposed to leaving it gray. So they're not beautiful, are they, in our modern eyes? And of course, everybody in the audience would be like, no, they're beautiful. And then I would say, well, what makes these ladies beautiful? And usually, almost immediately, it would be their smiles. Okay. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is how do we put a smile? What we don't know if either one of these women are faced with healthcare challenges and challenges in their life that made it difficult to smile. And part of navigating through life's chapters, and let's call this the chapter of growing older, is how do we reinvent ourselves or help our loved ones reinvent themselves to put a smile on their face. And that can be very challenging if you've got healthcare issues and independence issues and loss in the family. But millions of people have reinvented themselves through adversity and challenges. And that's, again, a reminder for today, and the resources that we're talking about is living a purposeful life that gives us the ability to smile. Okay. Now, as I had mentioned, my organization is the Positive Aging Community. And today I generally put things in 3 different buckets: housing options, aging in place options, and resources. And so we'll probably refer to those throughout today's discussion. But what I want to share with you is a 3-legged stool that I created. And I'll tell you, I'm 57 years old, and I've been in this business, been publishing this resource guide for 32 years. But 13 years ago, when I was 43, I moved in and I lived in 5 different senior living communities as a resident. And part of the reason I did this was I was regarded as the senior housing expert. And I've interviewed hundreds of people on and families on their transition. And I've visited over 500 senior living communities. But what I realized was, it's like, how can I be an expert at something if I haven't experienced it firsthand? And so I moved in and I lived in these 5 different communities as a resident. And when I made that move, what I realized was that my fellow neighbors in these communities were generally all there because one or all 3 legs of these stools were weak. Okay. Now, you'll notice the top of the stool doesn't say, the top of the stool sort of relates to what I was just talking about. The top of the stool says, how can we live a purposeful life no matter what our age and ability? And then the 3 legs of the stool, which I'll just run through real quick, are, the first is getting around. Okay. If we can't drive or we don't want to drive, all of a sudden our purpose is compromised. We could be at home, be more lonely and isolated. We could also have to rely on friends and family to get us the places that we want to be. The second leg of the stool is accessible environments. Is that if our mobility is compromised due to some health changes and our bedroom's on the top floor of our house, that could compromise our purpose. And the last but not least is neighborhood connections. Is that oftentimes when I'm talking to people about aging in place, and they'll talk about how much they love their neighborhood, I'll say, well, how connected are you to your neighbors? And oftentimes they start telling me stories about 20 years ago, not today, in the connections that they have in their neighborhood and their community. So today, some of the some of the resources that I'm going to be talking about today are going to help you or your loved ones make the legs of this stool as strong as possible, no matter whether you're living at home or you're moving to a community. Okay. And we're going to kind of go through those two elements, aging in place or making a move, and then resources that can help you do both of those things. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start off with aging in place. But before I do that, I want to just take a little break here, and I'm going to check chat, and I'm going to check my Q&A, and I don't have any questions at this point, but let's jump into the aging in place solutions, and then feel free to throw in any questions or raise your hand, type them in, what have you. Okay, so let's go back to my slide deck, and we're going to talk about aging in place and aging in community. So first off, let me explain the definition of this, or at least the way that I use it is that aging in place is ourselves or somebody staying in the home that we're currently living at for as long as possible. That is aging in place. Now, aging in community would be staying in the community, the neighborhood, the general proximity of where you live as you grow older. And I'll give you a great example of where I first discovered a great example of aging in community. There was I'm going to talk about how we can remodel our homes to age in place. And there was a contractor that specialized in this up in the Baltimore area. And he met with a client, and the client really needed some tools to live on one level in her home, and or to access all levels, and preferably live on one level in her home. And when he sort of investigated her home, a stair glide was something that he recommended. She didn't want that. And he talked about an elevator, and she thought that would be kind of cool, but it was very expensive. And he presented the proposal to her for all the things in her home, and he could tell that this was outside of her budget. But as he left the neighborhood, he noticed a home that was more of a ranch style in the neighborhood. And his hunch was that he could modify that home for her for much less. And I believe he actually just knocked on the door and asked the homeowner if they were intending on selling at any point in time. And it just so happened that within 6 to 8 months, they were able to make the transaction so that this woman could sell her home, move to this home, which he modified for much less, and she was able to age in the same neighborhood in a much safer and accessible home. Okay, so that's difference of aging in place and aging in community. Now, aging in place, who is it good for? In general, somebody with good health is that although we can modify our home so that if you were to come home from the hospital or a rehab center, you could stay at home. But to live a purposeful life at home, somebody with good health, a floor plan and accessibility, access to transportation, and a pre-existing network of support, or one that you've thought about. And I'm going to go through these 6 considerations when we think about aging in place here to give you some ideas. Okay. So the first things I want to tell you about is AARP and this website Walk Score are both really great resources out there. So if you just type into Google the AARP Livability Index, and you can type in any address, and it will give you a score based on the housing, the neighborhood, the transportation, the environment, to give you an idea of whether your neighborhood is livable, or the neighborhood that you might be considering moving to is livable. And then the next thing that I want to talk to you about we were talking about earlier is getting around. If you or somebody that you love is not comfortable driving, or you're eager to sort of see them, drive less, or you're looking for a more walkable neighborhood, the website Walk Score is a great place to find the most walkable communities that are out there. But down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see I've got several logos here. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area, so we've got a program called Metro Access that will literally pick people up who have a disability and transport them just about anywhere. There are programs like that throughout the country. One of the best things for older adults has been Uber and Lyft, in terms of easy access to transportation. However, both Uber and Lyft are dependent on one important thing, a smartphone, and you being comfortable and skilled enough to use that smartphone. And again, this is not to draw a stereotype to older adults, but a lot of older adults might be intimidated. And quite frankly, I don't like it that I can't call somebody and talk to somebody when I'm ordering an Uber or Lyft. Well, there's a company out there called GoGo Grandparents. You can search them up on Google, GoGo Grandparents. And the beauty with GoGo Grandparents is you can call an 800 number and get an Uber and Lyft ride. And even better, they have identified the Uber and Lyft drivers who have proven themselves and who are excited to work with older adults in their transportation needs. And so GoGo Grandparents has been found to be very helpful for a lot of folks. Depending on where you live in the country, there might be a Shepherd Center near you. And Shepherd Center provide volunteer transportation to older adults. And that's another great transportation getting around resource. But what I urge people to do is, no matter where they are in the country, usually the Area Agency on Aging, which is in every county in the country, will know about some transportation programs in your area. And more than likely, you will be amazed at some of the resources that are out there. Another great place is faith-based, is that if you have a loved one who's a member of a church, is talk to the senior ministry or the leadership there. And a lot of times churches have organized a variety of transportation options. Okay, now here's the topic that I love talking about, and that is universal design and creating safe and accessible homes. Okay. And I want you, most of the time when I bring up this topic, people are sort of like, oh, you mean those ugly stainless steel grab bars and those plastic, stools that they put in the bathrooms? Yes, in theory, those are things that can make our living space safe and accessible, but not necessarily beautiful and purposeful and a place that we're excited to, call home. The downside about universal design is it's best if these modifications are done in advance of you needing them or potentially needing them. Most people want to make these remodeling changes when they're in the car on the way home from the hospital. And that's pretty challenging, especially in this remodeling and contracting environment. But let me walk you through some universal design uh, choices or ideas, concepts. And then this could be a great topic for a whole hour for your group. But what you see here are three different environments. Let's start with the bathroom, because in the bathroom, you've got weird lighting, reflection surfaces, water, slippery surfaces, and sometimes limited space. And what you see here in this example is a beautiful bathroom that has no curb getting in and out of the shower, has some grab bars that are easily accessible, has an easily accessible place to turn on and off the water. The sink is a pedestal sink, so somebody with a wheelchair could roll up here and utilize this sink. And you probably can't see it that well, but you can actually, this mirror can be tilted a bit. This to the lower right, what you see is a barrier-free entryway. And this is obviously a beautiful, intentionally designed home that doesn't have any steps. But there are a lot of creative ways that we can create a barrier-free entryway in all of our homes. Sometimes you get creative and you go around back. Other times it could be a ramp that's installed in a garage. I think most folks want to avoid the stainless steel wheelchair ramp on the front of their house, and that is possible if there is a little planning and intention done in advance. And then what we see on the top here is a beautiful accessible kitchen. You can see there's countertops at all different levels. You can see the gentleman is cooking a meal for himself because there's little doors that open under the cooktop range. But one of the things that when I talk about this is that universal design says we can all, if we create environments that are designed for people with disabilities, we create environments that are better for all of us. So just think about how convenient it would be on Thanksgiving to peel the potatoes right there at the cooktop, sitting in a stool. You know, it's that's good universal design. So I can dive into this topic a little bit more, but I want to make sure that I get through all the other points. So some other key considerations to aging in place, and probably one of the biggest considerations, is home maintenance. And when I say home maintenance, I mean, a lot of times people think about cleaning out gutters, mowing the lawn, staining the house and things like that. But let's just think about that light bulb that needs to be screwed in, and you don't want to get up on a stool. It can be hard to find somebody that is going to do something like that and that you trust. And so setting up a system and a network of support when we're aging in place to do these various tasks is very important. The National Association of Home Builders has a certified aging in place specialist designation. So these are remodelers and contractors that are familiar with different things that can be done. Having a safety inspection in one's home is not a bad idea. A lot of times what we see is that the way that we set up our home when we moved into it in our 20s and 30s can now potentially be a safety hazard if we've had some changes in our health and mobility. So in technology, you sort of see at the bottom of the page there, I've got the Amazon Alexa, and this device has been very helpful to a lot of older adults. I'll share a story with one of my friends whose mother had macular degeneration. She was losing her vision. The family wanted her to move to an assisted living or a community, and that was not something that she was interested in at that time. And so for her safety and her purpose in life, they put the little Amazon Alexa hockey puck in every single room of her house. It was pretty affordable. I think they're like $30 now. And so she could call out to Alexa anywhere in the house, But the exciting thing that she gained with that improvement was she could she could have the New York Times read to her. She could listen to her music. She could call her friends and her kids. But the thing that she liked the best is she could do her grocery shopping now on her own. So she had a grocery shopping list. She'd say, Alexa, add broccoli to the grocery shopping list. Alexa, add toilet paper to the grocery shopping list. And then at each week, she would say, Alexa, buy my grocery shopping list. And it would schedule the arrival for the Amazon delivery. And she got to know the delivery driver. And so she trusted him to help her put things away when he would come into the house. There's a profession that is very helpful in all of these aging related topics that I'm going to talk about today. It's called aging life care managers. These are primarily nursing and social work trained professionals that can help families and individuals make a plan and implement the plan. And, one of the topics that you saw in my little survey there is communicating amongst family members. Where I always recommend aging life care managers is when somebody calls me up, and this happens about once a week, and it's like, my brother and sister and we don't agree on what's the best thing for mom. And I always say, hire aging life care manager, have them map out a plan and talk to mom about her various choices. It's not about what you, the kids, want. It's about what's best for mom. And then that aging life care manager can help everybody communicate on what's best for mom. For aging in place, if healthcare changes occur, home care agencies can be hired. For people that are caring for a loved one with dementia at home, a great resource is adult daycare. And there's a movement now that's nationwide, and it's called the Village Movement. These are organizations that have been put together in neighborhoods to support aging in place and to help with those neighborhood connections that I was talking about earlier. Okay, I've got one more slide on aging in place, and then I see there might be a question, and I'm going to take a little break. So another thing that I want to talk to you about that sort of bridges the aging in place to making a move, and that's home sharing, is that home sharing is something that is gaining popularity amongst older adults. And whereas, 10 years ago, the cohort of people 65 plus said, yeah, I don't want to share my home with anybody. This is becoming much more desirable and acceptable because it can save money, it reduces isolation, and it potentially can provide some assistance for aging in place. And so I've got the picture of the Golden Girls there, but friends, family, are young and old, are sharing homes and enabling aging in place to occur much, much better. But also there are websites out there like the one that I have on the screen, Silver Nest, where people can sign up to share their home or find somebody that might want to share their home. And I'm going to, speaking of sharing, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to take a peek at this question that looks like it came through here. And somebody says, safety is the issue for me when using public transportations with seniors. So I agree. And, but I also want to address, when we're talking about safety, I also want to address fraud against older adults, because the biggest demographic group that has fraud committed against it these days is older adults. And it's generally lonely and isolated older adults are susceptible to fraud and safety concerns. And yes, if somebody is traveling on public transportation by themselves, they are, whether they are young or old, they could be susceptible to a fall or somebody taking advantage of them. And so one of the things, and this is where having a network of support, whether it's family, friends, or paid support, like an aging life care manager that that we are connected with. And on that little survey that I did at the beginning, I threw up a topic of solo aging. So the reason that I did this is, on a weekly basis, we have open discussions on a wide variety of topics, and I'll send you a link so that you can attend those. Our most popular topic is solo aging. And this topic of solo aging, the issue of what if something happens to my mom, she's all alone, or what if something happens to me, I'm all alone, is on the forefront of a lot of folks' minds. So a lot of the solutions that we're going to talk about today will help us create a solo aging strategy. And now, because this is such a popular topic, when I'm out at a barbecue and I tell people what I do and I tell them about our discussions, a lot of times I'll say, and our most popular topic is solo aging. And oftentimes I get somebody who says to me, oh, I don't need to worry about solo aging. And I'm like, you don't? Yeah, I'm married and I've got 3 daughters. And I go, well, what are the chances that you and your spouse are going to pass away on the same day? And they oftentimes look at me, well, I've never heard of that happening except for in accidents. I go, okay, so chances are one of you is going to outlive the other. Yeah. And your 3 daughters, do you want them to do you want to move in with them? Do you want them rearranging their life to support you if you have a change in your healthcare? And then they look at me, well, no. And so I say, well, right now, you should be thinking about a solo aging strategy. You may never have to implement it, but if you don't think about it, you can sort of see your spouse and your kids are going to have to start thinking about and making decisions that you haven't discussed with them before. And so that really opens people's eyes up. Okay, let's see. Somebody has a question here. How can these conversations become a conversation piece for the senior that is trying to hold on to their independence? Okay, this is an amazing question. And I'm not worried about the people that are on this discussion today. You all showed up for this discussion, and hats off to you. But there's folks out there that have difficulty talking about these topics. And we have to be creative about having these conversations with our kids and our friends and our support network, and then encouraging those folks that we care about to have a conversation. This is not easy. It may take multiple different attempts and tries, but what I will share with you is that you can come up with different ways to bring up the conversation. So maybe somebody in your parents' circle had a change in healthcare, and so instead of saying, "Hey, mom, what would happen if you had dementia," or "Mom, we should start looking at assisted living for you," you can frame it as, "Hey, what happened with Uncle Jeff? I know that he moved to an assisted living. How did they make that decision? I was just kind of curious because I got a friend that I'm trying to help." And now you begin to have this conversation. It's not about them. It's a conversation about if any of us had a healthcare status change, what would we want to have happen? Now, here's what I get this, the folks that I talk to a lot, I get calls from adult children, and the first thing they say is, my mom said she is not leaving this house and she will never go to a nursing home. And I know a lot of people have said things like that, but if we have a change in healthcare status and um, and assisted living, memory care, a nursing home is a better place that where we can live a more purposeful life and be in a safe and accessible environment. It when people make a statement like that, it makes it very difficult for the family to help mom. And so when people make those statements is, if we can have a deep conversation, and it's sort of like, well, mom, I hear what you're saying, but if you had dementia, like, your best friend, do you really think that staying at home would be a safe environment? And who's going to take care of you? And a lot of times when it's framed in that context, people will see that, oh yeah, no, I remember how Uncle Jeff was. Okay, so the aging life care managers can be a great resource in getting the conversation started to get back to that question. Also, there are a lot of support groups out there, support groups for caregivers, support groups for people who are caring for people with dementia, support groups for people that are planning ahead. And you'll find that other folks are going through the same thing you are, and maybe some of their ideas could help incubate a way to have the conversation in your family. Okay, all right. Let me look at the clock. Okay, since my poll, there wasn't that many folks that wanted to know in too great detail about the senior living options. I'm going to try to quickly run through these, but then if you want me to dive into any of these categories, throw them up into chat or into the Q&A, and I'll address it there. Okay, so we talked a little bit about aging in place, and my mantra there is, you got to plan, you got to have a network in place. And if you can make changes to the home environment and get things in place in advance, that can be a place where we can live a purposeful life. But sometimes, as the example that I just shared, the home may be lonely and isolating. The home might not be a safe environment. The home might be too much maintenance, too much home, and we need to think about, okay, where is a place that me or my loved one can move and live a purposeful life? And the first thing that I'm going to recommend is that when you have this conversation is, try not to think of these as old folks' homes. Pretend that you're thinking about choosing a college, whether it be for yourself or a loved one. Because when a college student tours a campus, he doesn't care that it's the square footage of his dorm room. It's most certainly going to be smaller than the home he's living in. What a college kid looks at is the other students that are on campus and the faculty that are on campus and all the exciting things to do on campus. And that's the mindset when we look at senior living options that you want to take as well. It's more important to focus on the people living within the walls of the community than the walls of the community, because it's going to be a little bit different and more than likely smaller than any of the homes that we're moving from, especially if we lived in the suburbs. So the first category of housing I'm going to share with you is one that is, I sort of made up this acronym, SMART Lifestyle Communities, because a lot of the people in our community and people who get our source book, they say, "Hey, I've been to these places. I'm not ready to move to a place that says senior living community." And so what I recommend to those folks is to look for apartments or condos that are in walkable neighborhoods, going back to the walk score, um, that are close to amenities and can provide a lower maintenance lifestyle. And so you see this photo here on the screen of an apartment building that has a Harris Teeter in the bottom floor. The place that most of us visit on a regular basis is a grocery store. So if you can find a home that is a walkable distance to a grocery store, now you're living a less car dependent lifestyle. Now, most of these luxury apartments are actually going to be less expensive than the senior living options that I'm going to share with you right now. So the first category of senior living is active adult, 55 plus, independent living. These are generally senior apartments, new home community, and condos. Um, they may be affiliated with assisted living, which is the next category, but oftentimes this is just age segregated senior living. Lots of clubs, activities, and amenities. Okay. The next category of housing is assisted living. It's designed for people that aren't capable of living independently, but don't need the level of care in a nursing home. And these communities. When my grandfather 32 years ago was in a nursing home, there were people in nursing home. There are people who are now in assisted living that would have been in a nursing home 30 years ago, which is why we have this stigma of nursing homes, because if you just need help with one or two activities of daily living, it's much nicer to live in an assisted living residence as opposed to a nursing home. Now, an offshoot of assisted living is memory care, because a lot of times folks that have dementia or cognitive impairment, they are still mobile and healthy. And so that is what has created these memory care communities that are specifically focused on people with early to late stage Alzheimer's and dementia. And they're secure, they're safe, and the staff is trained to take care of people with this horrible challenge that we're all faced with, is the fact that the older we live, the more longevity we have, the greater the chance that we could have a cognitive impairment like dementia. The next category of housing, we're all familiar with it. All of our grandparents are just like, I never want to move to one of these places, a nursing and rehab center. With the growth of aging in place home care and assisted living, nursing homes are much better places than they were a couple of decades ago, because these are places where most of us will go for short stay rehabilitation. In general, it's a lot better being in a nursing and rehab center than in the hospital. And if we can go to a nursing and rehab center, get some rehab, be discharged back home, back to or to an assisted living, what have you, it's a better scenario. People of all ages are in nursing and rehab centers now, recovering from accidents and surgeries and things of that nature. Now, the last category of housing that I'm going to talk about is a life plan community. This is where we take independent, assisted, and nursing, put it together on one campus. The concept is that an individual can move in while they're active and independent and live their lifetime in that community. This is a very appealing option. However, this is the option that you hear about when people say, I'm looking at this senior living place and it has a large entry fee. There are a lot of different types of contracts, but this is the category that people are most referring to with when there's an entry fee involved. Now, what that entry fee is, it's kind of like an insurance policy. So everybody in that community is paying an entry fee, and then they pay a certain amount for independent, certain amount for assisted, certain amount for nursing if they need it. But if they were to move directly to assisted living or nursing in and not be a part of this community would be much more expensive, is that the entry fee is sort of an insurance policy that helps defray that cost. On the screen, you'll see that this is the Genworth Cost of Care Survey. I need to update it. This is 2020, but it gives you an idea of the different costs for in-home care, assisted living, and nursing care now and in the future. And let me stop sharing. And I think we've got a couple of comments here. Okay. Jennifer says, all this sounds great. However, we live in a very rural area and we do not have a lot of these options available. Yeah, every community and area is a little bit different. And Jennifer, if you're in a rural area, first off, no matter how rural an area we are, it's served by an area agency on aging and part of the Older Americans Act. And so I recommend, like, it might be contacting your state office on aging and first just identifying the amount of resources that are available. And let's say that you've done that and you've really, man, there's not really much here for my mom. This is where we've got to, and this is truly a challenge. Because in rural areas, this is a national challenge where there are, like, I think Vermont is a great example of a state that has the highest population of older adults, and the young people that grow up in Vermont move out of state. And in rural areas, you get a lot of that, where as opposed to staying around and living in a small town and being able to take care of the elders, our young people are migrating away and going to cities. And so it takes some creativity, but, you know, faith-based organizations are a great resource. Connecting with neighbors, you know, even if like a group might not exist on caregiving in your town or community, it may be that try to form one, you know, reach out to an AARP chapter. If your parent worked for a company for many years, reach out to the employee assistance program at that organization. There may be some resources there. I wish I had a magic wand to solve this problem, but it's a national problem. And in Maine, and I'll tell you, like, actually one of the most innovative programs on driving was founded in Maine. It's called ICN, and it was started by a woman whose son was injured by an older driver, a woman that, you know, was older. She was living alone. She gets in the car and she hit her son. And this woman, Catherine, I forgot her last name, she started this volunteer driver program in Maine because, again, you're living in a rural area, and you know, a lot of these older adults, to get to the things that matter, have to get into a car, and they drive, but they're making the world not safe, potentially, for themselves and for the people around them. So Jennifer, just start with the state office on aging, see if you can get to the local office on aging, and then just try to get out there and be an advocate. And to everybody on this call today, I love brainstorming with folks one-on-one. And I'm gonna, because we've got 9 minutes to the top of the hour, I'm gonna drop in, see if I can drop in chat here, my contact info. So if you want to reach out to me after this, feel free to reach out. So my phone number is 703-966-6182. My email is steve@proaging.com. And then I'm going to put, I have a calendar where you can schedule time right on my calendar, and I'm going to drop that link in there as well. And then I also want to drop in our website. And I think I had shared with you that every week we have live and interactive discussions. So on the topic of solo aging, next week we're having a discussion on solo aging. These are great places to brainstorm with other folks in the same boat, to hear an interesting speaker and discuss a topic that might be helpful. And yeah, next week we've got and actually we've got a discussion on the 25th of this month on older drivers and solutions for older drivers. So okay, let me get back to my thanks for those questions, folks. I'm going to get back to my slides and just go over a few things. I just, in talking to Jennifer, I was talking about the area agencies on aging. I know you all are from all over the country, but the area agencies on aging, you just search it up, Bucks County Area Agency on Aging, Maine Department on Aging, and these are a great place to start to find resources in your own backyard. There's a profession called elder law attorneys, and these are attorneys that specialize in, helping navigate the maze of elder care. And it's very important, the conversations that we have. Somebody just made a comment that chat does not seem to be open. I tell you what, I'm going to make sure to, I'm recording this, and I'm going to send this recording to the folks that organized it, and I'll make sure to drop chat into the, no, you know what? That's my fault. I didn't post it in chat the right way. Here we go. There's all those things that I was just talking about. Thank you, everybody. Yes, I didn't post it correctly. Okay. So area agency aging, elder law, great at helping navigate the legal matters, and these conversations that we have in advance. We need to have the proper legal documentation, our advanced care planning, our make our wishes known, who's going to be our medical and healthcare power of attorney. These are one of the reasons why we have these conversations, and then creating the documentation so that if something happens to us, our loved ones in our network understand what our wishes are. I told you about aging life care managers. There's another profession out there called senior move manager. Moving at any age can be challenging, but and so these move managers can sort of take care of the moving, the downsizing, the giving things away, and they've been very helpful to a lot of individuals. There's another profession called daily money managers. These are folks that do sort of bookkeeping and bill paying, but they do a lot of other things too. So for example, I've heard some stories about folks that hire a daily money manager because their vision is difficult and it's hard for them to pay the checks or what have you. And so the daily money manager comes every week, they go over the bills, and then a lot of times the daily money manager will drive them to the grocery store or do some errands with them as well. So it's not just a standard, bookkeeping thing. There's a profession called patient advocates that I'm a big fan of. And because especially like if you find yourself in a healthcare setting, so let's say somebody falls and they're in the hospital, and all of a sudden anybody that walks in the room with a white coat, you just agree with what they say. Patient advocates do just that. They can advocate on your behalf. They can make sure that you understand that you have choices. And a lot of times we hear folks, went to the hospital and they did what the doctor said, and then they later learned that they could have done they could have gone a different route, and they didn't really understand that. And a patient advocate can help with that. I'm a big fan of faith and community-based support. There's a lot that our faith-based organizations can provide, and a lot of times we don't even realize that it's available. And so reaching out to faith-based organizations that are around where we live or where our loved ones lived, even if you're not a member of that specific church, there may be some benefits that you can get there. Okay. All right. And Juliet says, can we share the PowerPoint? Absolutely. I'm gonna create a link with the recording, the chat, and the PowerPoint for everybody. And I should be able to get that done this afternoon and share it with my contact Juliet, who can. Oh, actually, I have everybody's email address. I can email. If you signed up for this, I can email you the recording, the PowerPoint, and the chat. So that's great. Okay. All right. My last little slide here is steps to take. Talk about these options with your loved ones. It's hard to have these conversations, but try. You don't have to have it, at the Thanksgiving table. This can be, an ongoing thing, and in having these types of conversations. Research the options and resources. Think about it, folks. I know a lot of the things that I'm talking about today, none of us want to go to an assisted living. But an assisted living could be a good place for me if I have some healthcare issues. And so if I can familiarize myself with the assisted livings in my community by volunteering, by just stopping by, going to one of their open houses and getting a free dinner out of it, now I'm a little bit more prepared at what my options might be if things change in the future. If you've got a financial advisor, great person to have this dialogue with. If you don't, talking with somebody that you trust about your finances and what options are available. One thing that I didn't really dive into today is that if you know somebody that you think is going to require subsidies or might qualify for subsidized programs, it's very important to get them on the waiting list as soon as possible, because on that end of the spectrum, there are options, but there are many times waiting lists. On the other end of the spectrum, if you know somebody who's wealthy and has a significant amount of assets, there's a lot of options there too. In the middle, where most of us land, this is where we've got to be creative. And so in understanding how much income and assets you have and what you can afford is very important. And be prepared for all scenarios. Okay, we talked about dementia and Alzheimer's. This may not impact you or anybody in your family, but not being aware of it and not having a plan if something like that were to happen is where it's challenging to a lot of families and individuals. And get your record keeping and your details there in place, and tell people around you that where it is. And there's my contact info. It's 2:00 on the nose. Let me stop sharing my screen. Here, I'll leave that up on the screen. I'm going to check comments and Q&A. I hope you all found this helpful. If you've got some additional questions, you can contact me with my contact info. If you've got some questions now, throw them in there, and I'll do my best to address them. And then if there's something that I talked about today that you'd like to dive deeper into, talk to the team at I think it's I forgot the acronym here. USAA. Esra. Talk to them, and I'll either come in and do a program specifically on that, like universal design and remodeling, moving and downsizing, or help. Like a good talk could be have an aging life care manager come in and talk about what that profession does. So, all right, folks. Looks like we're good. I don't see any questions, and everybody's saying thank you. And I will get this recording done and send it out to all of you this afternoon. Goodbye.